What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Espresso, and welcome back to another video here today on the channel. Today, in this one, we're going to be taking a look at something that might be pertaining to 2017. Whether or not it's actually legit or not, I guess that's really all for time to tell, but it's interesting to take a look at because some of the parts actually do add up. Some of the things aren't so far-fetched, and some of them may actually be believable. So, I'm on the fence here with this. It is something very minor and very minute, but could lead to bigger things here if it were in fact to be true, and it was something that actually happened. But take this all with a grain of salt. I am in no way endorsing this little thing. I don't know if it's actually legit or if it's not. A lot of the things in my head tell me to say this is completely fake, but for right now, I'll take it at face value and I'll take it with an open mind. But with it only being January, I don't want to say anything that may get some people's hopes up, but we do need to remember that it is still only January, so it is possible this does fall into the fake category, but it is what it is right now, what we have at this point, and it's interesting to take a look at because once again, some things do line up, some things maybe not, but take it all with a grain of salt, take it all with an open mind, and we'll see where we go here from this. So that said, without further ado, let's just talk right now about this. So it comes over from the website, thetechgame.com. It's a site that I have not been to in years. I used to actually live on that site. It was a great site for a community on gaming, modding. I did a lot of the graphic stuff over there, but regardless, it comes from this site here where somebody posted, I think a Call of Duty studio visited my company. Now firstly, before we get into it, a little disclaimer here with this. The account that posted this only has 2 posts, one of which being this exact post we're talking about, but it's not just an egg account that was, say, created immediately to make this and maybe seem like something that could deter from the possibility of it happening. The account was made last year, almost a year ago from this time, but if that's any indication of validity, I guess you can gauge it how you will with this. But the message says, "Hello, this might be out of place, but I didn't sign anything, so we should be good. I work at Lockheed Martin, and some folks from a gaming studio called Sledgehammer Games were at my office a few months ago. The only reason I'm bringing this up now is because my daughter encouraged me to share this information online because it hasn't been talked about, which is news to me, especially seeing as I didn't sign anything, which I think everyone else did. Anyways, in February of 2016, a group of game designers visited my offices and wanted information on the F-117 Nighthawk, which some senior guys in my department had worked on back in the late 70s. They wanted to know stuff about the physics behind it, how it performed, and startup procedures the pilots would have to undergo in order to take off. They spent about 2 weeks at the offices, however, they spent most of their time in other departments. At the end of their stay, they had organized a presentation for employees that you needed to sign up for. From what I understand, the people attending the presentation had to sign some legal forms saying they wouldn't talk about the contents of the presentation. I was on my way out that evening when I decided to poke my head in at the presentation for a few minutes. I walked right into the auditorium and stood in the back. It was a rather bland presentation for a video game. It was just a PowerPoint. They talked about how the game was releasing in Q4 of 2017 and that it would be the next installment in the Call of Duty franchise. They also briefly talked about a level where the player would be flying the F-117. Additionally, they showed a slide featuring an image to showcase the graphics in the game. The character realism shocked me. It looked just like real life. I remember the character was a younger guy with a scruffy looking beard. I think he had a sweatshirt and a bulletproof vest on in addition to a cool looking beanie hat. The hat is the thing I remember the most. I also recognized the patch that he had on as it was from the British Special Forces, or SAS. The character was sitting on a curb smoking a cigar and holding a bullpup looking rifle. Very cool. The developers explained that the image was taken from a level of the game called The Troubles. They didn't elaborate any more on that. They went through a few other slides explaining how their goal was to make the game as realistic as possible, and when it comes down to the physics of the various equipment and vehicles they learned about while at Lockheed. I left the room after that as the developers were thanking everyone. Whatever game it is, I'm definitely going to buy it. So that is a lot to process. There's definitely a lot of stuff in here, and a lot of specifics that may or may not connect the dots in some regard here, and what we might be able to see come the future. Once again, I'm still very much so skeptical about this. It is something that might seem a little bit more descriptive than some other air quote leaks that we've gotten, but it's also still January. So that is definitely something to take into consideration and something that kind of pushes my mind away from believing this immediately. And maybe I'm in the right, maybe I'm in the wrong, but let's dissect this a little bit and take a look at some key parts in this as to why we can believe this and maybe why we cannot as well. Firstly, the account posting this says that he works at Lockheed Martin. What is Lockheed Martin? Well, firstly, it is a global company that works on aerospace defense, security, and other advancing technologies in that regard, and has done a lot of work with different private contracting for different projects, including that of aerospace engineering and design. How does this correlate with anything regarding the supposed F-117 Nighthawk that was mentioned? Well, the original Lockheed was a corporation that was founded in 1912 and lasted all the way up until a merger in 1995 to make it what it is now today, Lockheed Martin. And the interesting part with this is they worked directly on the F-117 Nighthawk. For those that are not aware what the F-117 Nighthawk is, it is the stereotypical stealth bomber that you see with the distinct V formation shape of the wings and the cockpit, and it's something that is universally known as one of the aircrafts in the stealth category. Now, one of the things that comes down to the most time-sensitive aspect of this is the date in which this was mentioned it was worked on. So the account said that the people inquiring about this really wanted to talk with the people that worked on it back in the late 70s. The late 70s almost implies a Vietnam era for a lot of people, especially with all the rumors surrounding the game and the setting right now, the possibility of returning to Vietnam for whatever Sledgehammer's title is in 2017. Does this add up? Well, if you want to take a look at first glance, the first flight and listed flight for the F-117 was on June 18th of 1981, so at first glance it doesn't really look like it lines up, but the entire design and the entire concept of this was conceived over a decade before its first flight. That started in 1964 with a Soviet mathematician mentioning the ability for radar to pick up things on its edge configuration, not the size of the actual object. This then in turn sparked the imaginations of designers everywhere with this, and the F-117 was born after the combat experience in the Vietnam War really was when the Soviet surface-to-air missiles really took down heavy bombers. So it was something that was shrouded in secrecy, something that really didn't get too much public knowledge on it, but was worked in the back ends and the dark shadows of, say, the engineering world, and for a good reason. They wanted to keep this new tech, this highly classified, very stealth project, away from everybody else, especially if the Soviets had such good SAM turrets to take down heavy bombers. Despite being worked on in the 1970s, it was not something that was public. It was a black project all the way up to its public reveal in 1990. But if you take a look at the specific date when the first model came into the process of being designed and built up, that was in 1975. So that aspect does in fact come into contact and check out when it could actually happen. Now, of course, this all could be something still faked, but let's take a look at something else as well. The next big thing mentioned was the paperwork needed here. This is something that really I get excited for, the idea of a Gulf War in a more modern type of conflict for the next setting, and then I look at this and it kind of brings me down again. He mentioned that he did not have to sign any paperwork, that only the people directly affiliated with this would have to sign paperwork. Now, that is something that is partially believable, and of course it still could happen. I've worked with the people of Activision, I've worked with different things where there are NDAs that needed to be signed where you cannot disclose any of this information or the full legal system could come down on you in a nice hot lawsuit. And this is something that for something this major, anybody that would have come in contact with this would have to sign one. So of course, maybe this guy doesn't actually need to be somebody that is listed for this. Maybe he stumbled across this on accident and wasn't anybody that ever really came in contact with this officially. But the way that he makes it sound like is that he was somewhat approached with this at the very beginning. But if that was the case, then he would definitely be needed to give and sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, that keeps everything fully confidential here with this. Now, the final big portion of this is the mention of a character scene in this presentation. Somebody that is described as a younger guy with a scruffy-looking beard, smoking a cigar sitting on a curb, with the designation of the SAS. Now, if that is any indication to anybody, if you've played any of the Modern Warfare games, that sounds strikingly familiar to that of Captain Price. Now, how likely is this that we get a Call of Duty title with Captain Price in it once again? A lot of people will jump on board with the Modern Warfare 4 thing, or maybe they're going to go in the line of a prequel, which would be the more of the case because it's in the 90s according to this. Something that would follow more of the Persian Gulf and something that did actually happen, so playing on a little bit of an event that is more modern, that we haven't stepped into the realms of within Call of Duty, and something that the SAS was actually into. If you want to take a look at the historical records, there were British forces forces that were contracted for this for the Persian Gulf, but one unit in particular really stands out, that being Bravo 20. It was an 8-man SAS patrol deployed into Iraq during the first Gulf War in '91. Their main goal was to destroy Iraqi Scud missiles, and they made their way into the history books and have had many books written upon them. In the SAS history, there's a very large fondness around the team. But how likely is this that this correlates to this air quote leak talking about the next Call of Duty title? Well, if it's in '91 like we're being told, or we're supposed to follow with the F-117 Nighthawk air quote leak on this as well, well then that would mean that perhaps Price would be a part of this SAS team or a different SAS team in the Persian Gulf. But he's described as a younger looking guy with a scruffy beard. But if we were to go off the canon and the lore of the Modern Warfare universe and what's extended into the Infinite Warfare universe via some Easter eggs, well then Captain Price would have been born on January 11th, 1953, which at the time of the Bravo 20 deployment, for reference, would make him roughly 38 years old, which is something that, if we're taking a look at younger guys, Captain Price wouldn't really fall necessarily into that category. So it is one thing that I think is a major flaw within this ideology and this air quote leak of it, but everything else seems to maybe check out and really connects the dots intertwined between each other very well. Once again, this may have absolutely no merit, but this is definitely something that stands out to me as a little red flag within all of this. It does a great job up until this point to make it believable aside from the NDA stuff, but this to me just doesn't really add up. So like I said at the very beginning of the video, this does a massively great job at making things look very finite and detailed within this. But is it something that I necessarily believe in? I'm not entirely sure. And of course, going over this with you guys now in my commentary is definitely something that I'm more so leaning towards the not real part. It just has some things that just seem off to it. But I would love to hear your thoughts down there in the comment section down below, especially if you made it this far. You guys are the true MVPs here for this. I wanted to give you guys my full discussion, full breakdown of this supposed leak and what we can maybe expect to see here out of this. Once again, I'm more so on the skeptical end and of course very skeptical with this because some things don't really add up, but I guess we'll see in time if this is in fact the case. Some things very much so do look legit, but I guess we'll see in time. So that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Leave your thoughts down in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of this? Are you guys thinking this might be something with some merit behind it, or do you think it's complete bogus, hokey stuff that has no credibility and relevance at all? And what do you guys think of the idea of a Persian Gulf setting rather than, say, a Vietnam or a World War II setting? That's something that I haven't really thought much of, but I think I'd be okay with because it's a more modern conflict and definitely something that sticks to what a lot of people may think Call of Duty actually is. So that said, leave it all down there in the comment section down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe to stay up to date with everything Call of Duty, Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, Modern Warfare Mastered, Call of Duty 2017, of course. All of it will be right here on the channel. But thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Prequel. I'll see you guys later. Hopefully you guys are having a great day. Take care and peace.